My name's Emily Harper, and if you'd met me 3 years ago, you would have thought I had it all together. 32 years old, living in a cute little brick two flat in Wicker Park, Chicago, with a steady job at a mid sized marketing firm downtown. I had good friends, a gym membership I actually used, and a family that, on the surface, adored me. Everybody said so. Emily's the reliable one. They'd brag at cookouts and Christmas dinners. That girl would do anything for you. They weren't wrong. I grew up in a sleepy suburb an hour west of the city. Think cornfields giving way to cul-de-sacs, Friday night high school football, and churches on every corner. My mom, Karen, taught third grade at the same elementary school she'd attended as a kid. My dad, Tom, worked second shift at the automotive parts plant until the layoffs started hitting in waves. We weren't poor exactly, but money was always tight, and mom made sure we knew gratitude was non-negotiable. From the time I was little, the rule was simple: family first, always. Saying no wasn't just rude, it was borderline betrayal. Mom would quote her own mother: "Blood looks after blood, Emily. The world's cold enough without turning your back on your own." So I learned to smile, nod, and say yes before anyone even finished asking. Need someone to watch your 3 kids so you can go to bingo? Sure, Aunt Lisa. Drive grandma to her cataract appointment in the middle of a Tuesday? Of course, I'll call in sick. Pick up Jake from whatever bar he stumbled into at 2 a.m. Keys are already in my hand. Jake, my big brother, 3 years older, 6 inches taller, and apparently made of Teflon. Nothing ever stuck to him. Not the failed community college classes, not the string of dead-end jobs, not even the DUI when he was 23. Mom would sigh and say, "He's finding his way." Dad would shrug and crack another beer. Me? I was the one who showed up with coffee and bail money when finding his way meant waking up in a holding cell. I told myself it was love. That's what love looked like, right? Showing up, sacrificing, never counting the cost. But there were costs. God, were there costs. By my late 20s, I'd started dreaming out loud about moving west, Seattle specifically. I'd scroll through photos of the Puget Sound at night, the Space Needle lit up against misty mountains, and feel this ache in my chest, like homesickness for a place I'd never been. I was good at design, really good. My side hustle, freelancing logos and branding packages, was pulling in almost as much as my day job. I could have built something real out there, joined an agency, worked with tech startups, lived in a city that felt alive in a way Chicago never quite did for me anymore. Every time I brought it up, though, the conversation went the same way. Seattle? Mom would laugh like I'd suggested moving to Mars. Honey, that's clear across the country. What about us? What if something happens to your dad's heart, or grandma needs to go into assisted living? You gonna fly back every weekend? Jake would snort. You hate rain, Em. You'd be miserable. Dad would stay quiet, but his eyes would get that hurt look, like I was already halfway out the door. So I'd backpedal. It's just talk, I'd say. I'm not going anywhere. And I believed it, or at least I tried to. There were moments, though, quiet ones, when the weight of it all pressed down so hard I could barely breathe. Like the Sunday afternoon I spent deep cleaning Mom's basement after she'd had minor surgery. I was on my knees scrubbing decades of dust from shelves while she napped upstairs, and my phone kept buzzing with notifications from a design conference in Portland I'd wanted to attend. I'd bought the tickets 6 months earlier, back when I still thought I could carve out space for myself. But then Mom's surgery got scheduled for the same weekend, and of course I refunded it. Family first. As I wiped grime off my hands, I caught my reflection in an old mirror propped against the wall. I looked hollow, like someone had scooped out pieces of me over the years and never bothered to put them back. I shook it off, told myself I was lucky. So many people didn't have family who needed them this much, who loved them this much. That night, driving back to the city, with the radio low and the windows cracked, I let myself imagine, just for a minute, what it would feel like to say no, to tell them I had plans, that I couldn't drop everything, that I wouldn't. The thought was electric, terrifying, thrilling. And then my phone lit up with a text from Jake. "Hey sis, can you spot me $400 till payday? Swear I'll Venmo you back Friday." I pulled over on the side of I-88, hands shaking on the wheel. I typed, "Sorry, can't this time." Then, before I could lose my nerve, I deleted it. Typed again. "Yeah, no problem, sending now." Hit send. The relief was immediate, for him anyway. 3 little heart emojis popped up in response. For me, the ache deepened. I didn't know it then, but that moment, those unsent words flickering on my screen, was the first crack in the foundation, the beginning of something I couldn't yet name. Looking back, I think the universe was already whispering warnings, little breadcrumbs I was too trained to ignore. Because the real storm, the one that would finally force me to choose between them and myself, was already gathering strength, quiet and patient, in the shadows of all those yeses I'd given away. By the time I hit 30, I'd pretty much mastered the art of saying yes without even thinking about it. It was automatic, like breathing. My weekends belonged to whoever needed me most, my vacation days got eaten up by family emergencies, and my bank account had a permanent outflow labeled Harper Family Support Fund. Nobody ever asked if I was okay with it. They didn't have to. I'd trained them well. I'd moved into the city, Chicago proper, right after college, telling myself it was for the job opportunities. Truth was, I needed some distance from the suburb where everybody knew everybody's business. Wicker Park felt like freedom, exposed brick walls, dive bars with live music, coffee shops full of people chasing dreams bigger than Friday night lights. I loved it. I'd walk to the Blue Line every morning with my AirPods in, sketching ideas on my phone for client projects, feeling like maybe I was building something that was mine. But distance only works if you enforce it, and I never did. Friday nights, my phone would buzz around 6. Hey, sweetie, Aunt Lisa's kid has strep. Can you watch the other two tomorrow so she can take him to urgent care? Saturday mornings, Grandma's bingo bus was short a rider, and she hated going alone. Sunday afternoons, Mom needed help meal prepping because her arthritis was acting up. I'd cancel plans with friends, change out of my jeans into something family appropriate, and drive the hour west with a trunk full of groceries I'd paid for. I never complained out loud. Complaining would have made me the problem. Jake was the biggest black hole in my schedule and my wallet. After his divorce at 29, he moved back into the basement at Mom and Dad's. Officially, it was temporary. Unofficially, it became permanent. He'd work odd jobs, construction in the summer, snow plowing in the winter, but mostly he floated. Bars, buddies, late nights that turned into late mornings. When money ran out, he'd text me. The requests started small. $20 for gas, 50 for a phone bill. Then they grew. 300 to fix his truck, 500 when he got behind on child support for his daughter Lily, the one niece I actually adored. Every time he'd promise it was the last. Every time Mom would call an hour later, he's really trying, Em. He just needs a little help to get back on his feet. I'd transfer the money before the guilds could fully settle in. There were nights I'd sit on my couch with a glass of cheap Pinot, staring at my banking app, watching my savings account dip lower and lower. I'd think about the freelance gigs I'd turned down because I was too tired from driving back and forth. I'd think about the trips I never took, New Orleans with college friends, that design retreat in Austin. I'd think about Seattle again, how the rain might wash some of this exhaustion away. But then I'd remember Mom's voice. Family helps family. That's who we are. So I'd top off Jake's Venmo and go to bed. The biggest test came the year I turned 31. Mom found a lump. The word cancer hung in the air for weeks while we waited for the biopsy. It came back benign, but the surgery to remove it still meant recovery time. Dad couldn't take off work. His PTO was already gone from earlier layoffs. Jake, he had a big opportunity with a buddy's landscaping business and couldn't miss the startup phase. So I did what I always did. I requested family leave, packed a bag, and moved back into my old bedroom for 6 weeks. I cooked, cleaned, drove Mom to physical therapy, managed her meds, fielded calls from worried relatives. I held her hand when she cried about getting older. I listened to Dad talk about how scared he'd been. I even mediated when Jake showed up drunk one night and started yelling about how nobody appreciated him. I lost 15 pounds that summer. My boss sent concerned emails. My friends stopped inviting me out because I always said no. When Mom finally got the all clear and I drove back to the city, I told myself it had been worth it, that this was what good daughters did, that love meant showing up no matter what. But something had shifted. I started noticing how one-sided it all felt, how nobody ever asked what I needed, how Jake never once offered to take a shift watching Mom, how Dad disappeared into the garage whenever things got emotional, how Mom's gratitude came wrapped in expectation. "I don't know what we'd have done without you, honey. Thank God you're not like those kids who move away and forget their parents." I began having panic attacks in the shower, silent ones, where I couldn't catch my breath. I'd stand under the water until it ran cold, telling myself to get it together. That fall, I met Ryan at a coffee shop in Logan Square. He bumped into me reaching for the same oat milk, laughed, apologized, and ended up buying my latte. We talked for an hour about design. He was a software engineer who moonlighted building apps for artists. He had kind eyes and this easy way of listening that made me feel visible. We started dating, slowly. Dinners that didn't involve anyone else's drama, walks along the lakefront where I could talk about my dreams without someone reminding me of obligations. He never pushed, but he noticed things. How I flinched when my phone buzzed after 9 p.m., how I'd apologize for canceling plans last minute when family called. One night, after I'd spent an entire Saturday helping Jake move, again, Ryan asked quietly, when's the last time someone asked what you wanted? I didn't have an answer. I wanted to believe things could stay balanced, family on one side, my life on the other, but the scale was tipping and I could feel myself sliding towards burnout. What I didn't know yet was that the unspoken rules I'd lived by my whole life were about to be tested in ways I never saw coming. Secrets buried deeper than Mom's old Christmas decorations were waiting to surface. And when they did, every yes I'd ever given would start to feel like a lie. 32 came and went with a quiet birthday dinner at a Wicker Park Italian spot. Ryan surprised me with reservations, a bottle of good Chianti, and a chocolate torta that made me forget everything for 2 whole hours. It was the first birthday in years I hadn't spent driving out to the suburbs for Mom's mandatory family party. I felt a little guilty texting her that I already had plans, but when Ryan reached across the table and squeezed my hand, the guilt faded fast. Dating him felt like waking up in a room where someone had finally opened the windows. He listened when I talked about work, really listened, asking questions about color theory and client feedback, instead of changing the subject to whatever crisis Jake was in that week. We'd spend Sundays hiking the trails at Starved Rock or just binge-watching shows on my couch, his arm around me while I sketched on my iPad. For the first time in forever, I wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes, waiting for the next emergency text. But family doesn't let go that easily. Mom started dropping hints almost immediately. "He seems nice enough," she said one Sunday when I finally brought Ryan home for brunch, "but he's very city, you know? All that tech talk. Does he even know how to change a tire?" Dad grunted agreement from behind his newspaper. Jake, hung over on the couch, sized Ryan up like he was competition and muttered, "Software guys make bank until the next layoff wave hits." I laughed it off, but the comments kept coming. Mom would call after dates. "Don't get too serious too fast, honey. You need someone who understands family responsibility." Jake sent me memes about corporate sellouts. Even Aunt Lisa weighed in at the next cousin's baby shower. "He's cute, but is he the sticking around type? You don't want to end up alone out in that apartment when we need you." The demands didn't slow down either. If anything, they ramped up, like they sensed fresh air in my life and wanted to slam the window shut. Jake lost yet another job, this time at a warehouse because he didn't vibe with the manager. He showed up at my door one Thursday night with a duffel bag and that sheepish grin I knew too well. "Just need a couch for a couple weeks, sis. Mom's place is too tense right now." I let him in. Of course I did. Ryan came over the next day, took one look at Jake sprawled out playing Xbox, and quietly asked later, "How long is a couple weeks in Jake time?" I didn't have an answer. Then came the loan request. Jake wanted to buy into a buddy's food truck idea. Real potential this time, I swear. He needed $5,000 to cover his share. Mom called the same afternoon. "It could be good for him, get him on a better path. You've got that savings account, right?" I stared at the paperwork he'd brought over. My name as cosigner, my credit on the line. For the first time, I felt something sharp and cold in my chest. I told him I'd think about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Ryan was at his place and the apartment felt too quiet. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Seattle job boards again. Senior designer positions at agencies I'd followed for years. Salaries that made my Chicago pay look entry level. Benefits, relocation assistance. I even filled out one application halfway before closing the tab in a panic. The next morning, Jake cornered me in the kitchen while I was making coffee. So, about that loan, I kinda already told my buddy yes, he's counting on me. I opened my mouth to say I wasn't comfortable, that I needed time, but the words stuck. Mom's voice echoed in my head. Family helps family. Saying no is disrespectful. I signed. 2 days later, the guilt trip started. Not from Jake. He got the money and disappeared into planning meetings. From Mom. Late-night calls about how Dad's blood pressure was up. Texts from cousins asking why I hadn't been out to visit lately. A voicemail from Grandma. I miss your face, sweetheart. Getting old is lonely when the kids forget you. My anxiety went through the roof. I started having full-blown panic attacks, heart racing, hands shaking, convinced I was having a heart attack at 32. I'd sit on the bathroom floor at work, breathing into a paper bag, telling myself to pull it together. I booked a therapist secretly, online sessions during lunch breaks so no one would know. The first time I said out loud, I feel like I'm disappearing, I cried for 40 minutes straight. Ryan noticed everything. He'd find me staring into space and gently pull me back. One night after I'd canceled our plans for the third time because Jake needed a ride to pick up his truck, Ryan sat me down on the couch. You're killing yourself for people who don't even see it. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to choose yourself sometimes. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the idea of saying no, of watching Mom cry, Jake rage, the whole family label me selfish, felt impossible, like ripping off my own skin. Still, the cracks were spreading. I started small, skipping one Sunday dinner with a vague work deadline excuse, not answering Jake's 1 a.m. texts right away, letting calls go to voicemail. Each tiny boundary felt like defiance, and each one came with a wave of guilt so strong I'd almost call back and apologize. I didn't know it yet, but I was standing on the edge of something huge. All those years of yeses had built a dam, and the pressure behind it was rising fast. One more push, one hidden truth surfacing from the past, and the whole thing was going to break wide open. It started with a simple favor. One more Saturday sacrifice to family. Mom had been complaining about the attic for months. It's a disaster up there, Emily. Mice probably throwing parties. I can't climb that pull-down ladder anymore with my knees, and your dad says he'll get to it someday. So when she called on a crisp October morning, voice sweet as pie, asking if I could come out and help sort through boxes before winter set in, I didn't even hesitate. Yes, of course, I'll be there by 10. I kissed Ryan goodbye. He was heading to a coding meetup and drove west on I-90 with a pumpkin spice latte in the cup holder and NPR on low. The leaves were peeking, all fiery reds and oranges blurring past the window, and for a minute I let myself pretend this was just a normal daughter thing, not a resignation, not another chunk of my weekend disappearing. The house smelled like cinnamon and lemon polish when I walked in. Mom hugged me too tight, Dad waved from his recliner where the Bears game was already on, and Jake was nowhere in sight, probably sleeping off Friday night. Mom handed me a dust mask and a trash bag like it was Christmas morning. Start with the far corner, she said. That's all your dad's old stuff. He won't mind if you toss anything that looks junky. Famous last words. The attic was exactly what you'd picture in a 1970s split level. Insulation fluff everywhere, naked bulbs swinging from a cord, stacks of Rubbermaid bins labeled in Mom's careful teacher handwriting, Christmas decor, kids' schoolwork, taxes 1998 to 2005. I worked methodically, hauling down boxes of ancient board games and baby clothes we'd never donate because sentimental value. By noon, I was sweaty, covered in dust, and nursing a splinter from a splintered crib rail. That's when I found the unmarked cardboard box tucked behind the water heater. It was heavier than the others, sealed with yellowed packing tape. Curiosity got me. I figured it was Dad's old tools or maybe his army stuff from Vietnam that he never talked about. I sliced it open with my keys. No tools. Letters. Hundreds of them, bundled with rubber bands that crumbled at my touch. Envelopes in different colors, some faded, some crisp, all addressed to Dad in feminine handwriting, return addresses from a town in central Illinois I'd never heard of, Decatur. My stomach dropped before I even pulled one out. The first letter was dated 1987, 2 years before I was born. Dear Tommy, I know you said last time was the last time, but I can't stop thinking about you. The kids keep asking when Daddy's friend is coming back to visit. I hate lying to them. I hate that we're the secret. Please call when you're in town again. Love always, Laura. My hands started shaking. I sat cross-legged on the plywood floor and kept reading. Letter after letter, year after year. Birthday cards to kids named Ethan and Madison, half-siblings I'd never known existed. Photos tucked into some envelopes, a woman with big 80s hair holding toddlers, then school pictures of teenagers who had Dad's eyes, Dad's nose, my nose. He'd had another family, another wife, Laura, who thought he was a traveling salesman. A whole second life running parallel to ours, funded by overtime shifts and business trips that left Mom alone with us kids. I found a marriage certificate, 1985, 2 years before he married Mom. Bigamy. The math hit me like a punch. He'd been splitting time, money, love between two households for decades. The layoffs we'd struggled through, probably when he was covering college tuition for Ethan. The mysterious inheritances from a dead uncle we never met, likely cash skimmed from one family to prop up the other. I sat there for I don't know how long, surrounded by dust and betrayal, reading until my eyes burned. The last letter was from 5 years ago, Laura furious, threatening to tell Mom everything if he didn't come clean. Dad's handwriting on a sticky note still attached. I'll handle it. Don't do anything rash. He never had. I carried the box downstairs like it was radioactive. Dad was dozing in his chair, TV blaring. I set it on the coffee table with a thud that woke him. We need to talk. His face went ash gray the second he saw the open flaps. Mom walked in from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel, and froze. Emily, honey, what? I didn't yell. I couldn't. My voice came out flat, dangerous calm. How long, Dad? How long have you been living two lives? He didn't deny it, just closed his eyes and whispered, I was going to tell you kids someday. Mom started crying, quiet, broken sobs that told me everything. She'd known. Maybe not the full scope, but enough. I found out when you were 10, she said, sinking on the couch. He promised it was over, that he'd chosen us. I stayed because leaving would have destroyed everything, and I thought if I just loved him harder, kept the family perfect. She looked at me then, eyes pleading. You were always so good, Emily, so helpful. I didn't want you to carry this too. But I had carried it. Every time money was tight and I picked up extra shifts. Every time Dad was out of town and I babysat so Mom wouldn't be alone. Every sacrifice I'd made to hold this fractured family together had been in service of a lie I didn't even know existed. I felt something inside me fracture, clean, sharp, irreversible. All those years of never saying no, of being the perfect daughter who kept everyone afloat, wasn't just cultural guilt or Midwest values. It was damage control for secrets I'd never been told. I stood up, legs numb. I need air. I walked out to the backyard where Jake and I used to swing on the old tire swing. The tree was gone now, cut down after a storm. Everything felt symbolic. My phone buzzed, Jake checking in. I didn't answer. Instead, I texted Jake, come home now. Because if we were finally blowing this wide open, we were doing it together. The storm I'd felt gathering for years, it had a name now, and it was about to hit land. The day after I found the box, the house felt like a pressure cooker. Nobody mentioned it at breakfast. Dad stared into his coffee, Mom busied herself scrubbing counters that were already clean, and Jake finally rolled in around noon, oblivious, asking what was for lunch. I left without saying much, drove back to the city with the radio off, replaying every memory through a new, ugly filter. Ryan could tell something was wrong the second I walked into my apartment. I hadn't answered his texts all day. He was on the couch with takeout Thai, waiting. I dropped my keys on the counter, sat down, and told him everything. The letters, the other family, Mom knowing, how every sacrifice I'd made had been propping up a 40-year lie. He listened without interrupting, then pulled me into his arms while I ugly cried into his hoodie. When I finally ran out of tears, he said quietly, "Em, none of this is your fault, but you don't have to keep paying for their mistakes." I wanted to believe him, I really did, but the next few weeks were a masterclass in emotional whiplash. Dad called once, voice shaky, asking if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us. We sat in a Dunkin' off the highway, him stirring sugar into his cup for 10 straight minutes. He apologized, said he'd been young and stupid, thought he could have both lives without hurting anyone, said Laura had passed 2 years ago, cancer, and the kids wanted nothing to do with him now. He looked smaller somehow, like the secret had been the only thing holding him upright. I asked why he never told us. He said, "I was ashamed, and your mom, she needed the family to look perfect. We both did." Mom's approach was different. Denial wrapped in guilt. She left long voicemails about how I was blowing this out of proportion, how every marriage has secrets, how I needed to forgive and move on so we could heal. When I didn't respond fast enough, the messages turned tearful. "You're breaking my heart, Emily, after everything I've done for you." Jake's reaction was purest rage. When he finally heard, Dad told him, he showed up at my apartment drunk, pounding on the door at midnight. Ryan wouldn't let him in, so he yelled through it, "You think you're better than us now? Digging through old crap like some detective? Dad screwed up, so what? You're gonna throw the whole family away over ancient history?" I opened the door a crack. "This isn't ancient history, Jake. It's why we grew up scraping by. It's why I gave up my 20s keeping everyone afloat." He laughed, bitter. "Oh, poor, perfect Emily, Saint Emily who never says no. You loved being the hero. Don't act like we forced you." He wasn't entirely wrong, and that hurt worst of all. Then came the real crisis, the one that finally pushed me over the edge. Jake got pulled over on a suspended license after leaving a bar, DUI number 2. He called me from jail at 3 a.m., slurring, crying, begging. "I can't tell Mom. She'll lose it. You're the only one who can fix this, Em. Please." The bail was $8,000, plus lawyer fees. He swore this time he'd get help, go to meetings, pay me back. I sat on my kitchen floor in the dark, phone to my ear, heart hammering. Ryan was asleep in the bedroom. He'd started staying over more since the attic discovery. I could hear his steady breathing through the door. I thought about the Seattle applications still open on my laptop, the freelance client who'd offered me a full-time remote gig if I could commit to 40 focused hours a week, the therapy sessions where I'd started admitting out loud that I was angry, really angry. Jake kept talking. "You're my sister. Family helps family. You always say that." Something inside me went very still. I said, "I need to think about it." He exploded, called me every name he could think of, said I was abandoning him when he needed me most, hung up. An hour later, Mom called. Jake had told her everything. Her voice was pure panic. "Emily, he's your brother. If you don't help, he could go to jail, real jail this time. How could you even hesitate?" I told her I was exhausted, that I couldn't keep being the safety net for everyone else's bad choices. She went silent, then whispered, "Your father's heart is acting up again. The stress, the doctor says he needs to avoid upset. If you do this, if you say no, you'll kill him, and it'll be on you." I hung up, turned my phone off, curled up on the couch, and shook until sunrise. The next morning, Ryan found me there, eyes swollen. He made coffee, sat beside me, and said, "Whatever you decide, I'm here. But Em, you're allowed to choose yourself. Just once." I called the jail, spoke to Jake directly. I love you, but I'm not bailing you out this time. You need to face this, and I need to stop enabling it." He screamed, threatened to never speak to me again, said I was dead to him. Mom left a final voicemail that afternoon. "If you let your brother go to jail, don't bother coming home for Thanksgiving. We'll manage without you." I didn't call back. That night, I applied for 3 jobs in Seattle, hit submit on all 3 of them before I could second guess. The breaking point didn't feel dramatic, no thunderclap, just a quiet, bone-deep certainty that if I said yes one more time, there'd be nothing left of me to save. I'd spent my whole life believing saying no to family was the ultimate sin, but saying yes forever? That was starting to feel like suicide in slow motion. Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away. The storm was coming, and for the first time, I wasn't going to stand in the middle of it trying to hold everyone else's umbrellas. I was going to find shelter, my own. Thanksgiving had always been sacred in the Harper house. Mom started planning the menu in October. Turkey brined for 3 days, her famous sage stuffing, green bean casserole with extra fried onions, pumpkin and pecan pies from scratch. The whole extended family came. Aunt Lisa with her latest boyfriend, cousins with their loud kids, Grandma holding court at the head of the table. It was chaos and casseroles and football on TV, and I'd always been the unofficial co-host, up at dawn to peel potatoes, setting the table with the good china, refilling drinks before anyone had to ask. This year, they'd warned me, come or don't bother coming back. After I refused to bail Jake out, the silence was deafening at first. No calls, no texts, then the trickle of messages from cousins. "Heard things are tense, hope you're okay." Aunt Lisa left a voicemail sighing about how family fights at the holidays are the worst. Grandma sent a card, actual snail mail with a $20 bill and a note, praying for all of you. I wasn't okay. I was a mess. The week leading up to Thanksgiving, I barely slept. I'd lie awake next to Ryan, staring at the ceiling fan, imagining every possible scenario. If I went, would they ambush me? Would Jake be there, fresh out on whatever bond he'd scraped together, glaring across the turkey? Would Mom cry the second I walked in? If I didn't go, would that be the final cut, the one that proved I was the selfish one they'd started calling me in group texts I wasn't on? Ryan never pushed. He just said, "Whatever you decide, we'll make it good. If you want to go, I'll drive you. If you want to stay, I'll cook the whole damn dinner myself." In the end, I went. Alone. Because if I was going to do this, I needed to do it without a buffer. The drive out felt longer than usual. Snow flurries whipped across the interstate, holiday music on every station mocking me. I parked in the driveway behind Jake's beat-up Silverado. Someone had clearly helped him after all, and sat in the car for 5 full minutes, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Mom opened the door before I could knock. She looked smaller, eyes red-rimmed, but she hugged me like nothing had happened. "You're here," she whispered, like it was a miracle. Inside, the house smelled exactly the same. Cinnamon, butter, roasting bird. Cousins shouted greetings from the living room where the kids were running wild. Dad gave me a nod from his chair, face unreadable. Jake was in the kitchen, carving the turkey with aggressive strokes of the electric knife. He didn't look up. Dinner went smooth enough at first. Small talk about weather, work, the Bears' losing season. I passed dishes, smiled when Grandma squeezed my hand, drank 2 glasses of wine faster than I should have. Then Jake set the knife down with a clatter. "So, Big Sis finally decided to grace us with her presence. Thought you were done with us, criminals." The room went dead quiet. Kids kept eating, oblivious. Adults froze. Mom hissed, "Jake, not now." "No, let's do it now," he said, face flushed, sober, I realized, which somehow made it worse. "Tell everyone how you left me hanging, Em, how family means nothing when it's inconvenient." I set my fork down carefully, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Jake," I said, voice steady even though my hands were shaking under the table. "Jake, I didn't leave you hanging. I told you I wouldn't enable you anymore. There's a difference." He laughed, sharp. "Enable, listen to you, Miss Therapy talking like she's above us all."
Dad cleared his throat. Enough. But Jake wasn't done. You think you're better because you found Dad's old letters? Newsflash, we all screw up. But you're punishing everyone because you finally grew a spine. Aunt Lisa tried to change the subject to pie, but nobody was listening anymore. I looked around the table, at Mom's pleading eyes, Dad's clenched jaw, Grandma's confusion, at the cousins pretending to focus on their phones, and I felt something shift, like a click inside my chest. I pushed my chair back and stood. No, I said. The word came out clear, loud in the silence. No, I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting myself. For years, I've been the one who fixes everything, who pays, who shows up, who keeps the secrets. And I'm done. Jake started to interrupt, but I kept going. Jake, you want to talk about family? Family isn't just taking. It's giving and receiving. It's boundaries. It's accountability. I love you, all of you, but I'm not sacrificing my peace anymore to keep this pretend perfect thing going. Mom started crying quietly. You're being cruel. No, Mom, I said, softer now. Cruel was teaching me that saying no made me disrespectful. Cruel was letting me carry everyone when nobody asked if I was okay. I looked at Dad. Cruel was the lie we all lived for decades. Grandma reached for my hand again, eyes watery. Sit down, honey, let's eat. But I couldn't, not anymore. I think I'm done here, I said. I walked to the door, grabbed my coat. Nobody stopped me physically, but the words followed. Mom, if you leave now, don't come back. Jake, good riddance. Dad said nothing. I stepped out into the cold, snow starting to stick on the grass. The door shut behind me with a finality that made my knees buckle once I reached the car. I drove away shaking, tears blurring the headlights, hands clenched at 10 and 2. Halfway home, I pulled over at a rest stop, sat in the empty parking lot, and sobbed until my throat was raw. Ryan was waiting when I got back. He didn't ask questions, just wrapped me in a blanket, made hot chocolate, held me while I told him every ugly detail. You said no, he whispered, and you're still standing. I was, barely. The fallout came fast. Group texts I was removed from, social media blocks, a letter from Mom a week later saying she needed space to heal from my betrayal. But something else came too. Relief. Deep, terrifying relief. For the first time in 32 years, I'd chosen me, and the world hadn't ended. It had just begun.
The weeks after Thanksgiving felt like walking through fog. Chicago winter hit hard. Gray skies, wind off the lake that cut right through you, and my apartment became my fortress. I turned off notifications for the family group chat I'd been booted from anyway. I stopped driving the old route west on weekends. I even changed my ringtone so Mom's old one wouldn't trigger that automatic spike of anxiety. Ryan was my anchor. He didn't try to fix me, he just showed up. Grocery runs, late night runs to Portillo's when nothing else sounded good, quiet evenings where we'd put on records and I'd sketch while he coded. He never said, I told you so, but I could feel his quiet pride every time I enforced a boundary. The silence from home didn't last, though. It cracked open slowly, one confession at a time. First was Jake. He got sentenced in early December. Mandatory rehab, probation, community service. No jail time thanks to a public defender who actually fought for him. One night, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. It was him, calling from the facility. "M," he said, voice rough, no bravado left. "They make us do this step, making amends. I owe you the biggest one." I sat on my couch, snow tapping the window, and listened. He admitted it all. The money I'd given him over the years? Mostly drugs. Pills at first, then worse. The food truck story was half-baked. He'd already spent the loan on a dealer before the truck idea even existed. He'd lied to my face for years because it was easier than facing himself. "I used you," he said, "because you always said yes, and I hated you for it a little, which is messed up, because it was my fault. You were just being you." He cried. I cried. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the first honest conversation we'd had since we were kids. I'm trying to get clean, he went on, for Lily, for me, not because anyone's making me. I told him I was proud he was trying, that I'd be here on the other side of this, but not as a bank, not as a rescuer. He didn't argue. A week later, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. I buzzed her up, heart in my throat. She stood in the hallway in her old wool coat, snow melting off her boots, holding a Tupperware of Christmas cookies like a peace offering. "Can I come in?" I let her. We sat at my tiny kitchen table. She didn't touch the cookies. "I started therapy," she said finally. "Individual. The church has a counselor who takes sliding scale." I waited. She had told her everything about your dad, about how I stayed, about how I put it all on you kids, especially you, to keep the family looking right from the outside. Her voice cracked. I was scared. If I admitted it was broken, I'd have to leave or face being alone. So I clung to the idea of us, to you. She looked around my apartment, at the design awards on the shelf, the photos of Ryan and me at the lakefront, the vision board with Seattle pinned up. "I see now how much I asked of you, how I made you the parent when I should have been strong enough to handle my own mess." I asked why she never told me about Dad's other family once she knew. She wiped her eyes. "Protecting you," I told myself, but really protecting me. If you knew, you might have left sooner, and I couldn't bear that. We talked for 2 hours. No yelling, no accusations, just truth. Raw, painful, necessary. Before she left, she hugged me. "I don't expect forgiveness overnight, but I'm working on being someone who deserves it." Dad's apology came in a letter, handwritten, 3 pages. He didn't make excuses. He wrote about growing up poor, terrified of commitment, thinking he could outrun consequences, about loving both families in his broken way and destroying them both in the process, about how watching me walk out at Thanksgiving had been the wake-up call he needed. He'd started going to a veterans support group. Turns out the shame went deeper than just the affair. He was talking to a counselor about depression he'd hidden for decades. "I'm proud of you, kiddo," he wrote at the end, "for having the courage I never did, for choosing yourself. Don't come back until you're ready. We'll be here, trying to be better." I read it twice, cried in the shower so Ryan wouldn't hear. The biggest shift wasn't their apologies, though. It was me. I got a call back from one of the Seattle agencies, a senior designer role, creative director track, a salary that made my eyes water. They wanted a virtual interview. I said yes. Told Ryan that night over deep dish at Lou Malnati's. His grin lit up the whole booth. "We're doing this? We're doing this." I flew out for the in-person a week later, walked the Pike Market in the rain, drank coffee that actually deserved the hype, stood on a ferry watching the skyline emerge from the mist. It felt like breathing after years underwater. Offer came 2 days later, accepted on the spot. When I told my parents over a careful video call, they didn't beg me to stay. Mom cried but said, "You deserve this, honey. Go live big." Dad added, "Send pictures. We'll come visit when you're settled." Jake, still in rehab, sent a text, "Kick ass out there, sis. I'll be the one cheering loudest when you're famous." Not fixed, not perfect, wounds still raw. But the secrets were out, the patterns named. And for the first time, the Harper family wasn't being held together by one daughter's endless yeses. We were starting, slowly, messily, to hold ourselves. You'd think after the secrets came out and the first real boundaries went up, things would calm down. Like the big explosion had happened and now we could all breathe. But no, real change, it fights back. Hard. The storm hit right after New Year's. I'd given notice at my job, signed the lease on a Capitol Hill apartment in Seattle sight unseen, except for the virtual tour, and started packing boxes in my Wicker Park place. Ryan was all in. He'd landed a remote-friendly role with his company and was planning to follow once I got settled. We were giddy some nights, spreading maps on the floor, marking breweries and hiking trails like kids planning summer camp. That's when my family decided to mount a full-scale counterattack. It started with the health scares. Mom called one Tuesday morning, voice trembling. "I'm in the ER, honey. Chest pain. They're running tests." My heart stopped. I threw on clothes, told my boss I had a family emergency, and sped west on I-90, calling Ryan from the car in full panic mode. I got to the hospital to find her sitting up in a bed, eating Jell-O, hooked to monitors that beeped steadily. The doctor came in 20 minutes later. Anxiety attack, not heart, high blood pressure, but stable, prescribed rest and follow up with her therapist. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I just got scared, thinking about you leaving. I don't know how to do this without you close." I held her hand, but something felt off, manipulative even. I stayed the day, drove her home, made soup, but when I left, the exhaustion hit different, less sympathetic, more wary. 2 days later, Dad texted, "Doc says my heart murmurs worse. Stress test next week. Could use you here if things go south." I called him. He sounded tired but calm, admitted the murmur was old news, just being monitored. When I pressed, he sighed. "Your mom's struggling with the idea of you gone. We both are. Just thought if you were here." Guilt trip. Classic. Then Jake, fresh out of rehab, full of early recovery fire, started in. Texts at first, "You're really bailing now when we're finally getting honest?" Then calls. "Millie misses her Aunt Em. Gonna be one of those relatives who only FaceTimes on birthdays?" The cousins piled on via a new group chat they added me to without asking. Memes about city girls forgetting their roots, passive-aggressive stories about how Aunt Lisa's daughter moved to Florida and barely calls. Even Grandma got in on it, leaving a voicemail in her shaky voice. "I'm not getting any younger, sweetheart. Hate to think my last years are without my favorite girl nearby." The pressure built like a Midwest thunderstorm. Heavy air, dark clouds, that electric feeling before the sky splits open. One Friday night, it peaked. I was boxing books when my doorbell rang. I buzzed up, thinking it was Ryan with pizza. It was all three of them, Mom, Dad, Jake, standing in my hallway like an intervention squad. Mom held a bakery box from my favorite suburban donut place. Dad had a photo album under his arm. Jake carried a six-pack of my favorite local IPA, like bribes. "We need to talk," Mom said, "as a family." I let them in because saying no at the door felt impossible. They sat on my couch, looking around at the packed boxes like they were evidence in a trial. Mom started crying immediately. "We're losing you. You're punishing us for mistakes that weren't yours." Dad opened the photo album, pictures of me as a kid at county fairs, Christmases, graduations. "This is us, Em. This is home. Seattle's a fantasy. You'll be lonely out there." Jake jumped in. "You think running away fixes anything? I'm sober now, 30 days clean. We're changing. For you." I stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, feeling cornered in my own apartment. "You're not hearing me," I said. "This isn't punishment. It's survival. I stayed for years, fixed everything, paid for everything, held every secret, and it almost destroyed me." Mom sobbed harder. "We're sorry. We said we're sorry. Isn't that enough?" "No," I said, voice rising. "Sorry doesn't erase the pattern. You're doing it right now, showing up unannounced, using guilt, health scares, nostalgia. It's the same playbook." Jake stood up. "So we're supposed to just let you go? Pretend it doesn't hurt?" "Yes," I shot back, "because my life isn't a consolation prize for your pain." The fight went nuclear from there, voices overlapping, Mom accusing me of being cold, Dad saying I was throwing away my roots, Jake calling me selfish for abandoning Lily. I held my ground, but it cost me, tears streaming, chest tight, that old panic clawing back. Finally, I yelled, "Enough! Get out, all of you!" They left stunned, Mom wailing in the hallway, Dad muttering apologies, Jake slamming the elevator button. I collapsed on the floor amid half-packed boxes and called Ryan, sobbing so hard I could barely speak. He was there in 10 minutes, held me while I shook, then helped me block their numbers temporarily. "Just for a few days," he said, "so you can breathe."
The next week was hell. Guilt ate me alive. Nightmares about mom in the hospital for real. Fantasies of unpacking everything and pretending none of this happened. Therapy went to twice a week. My counselor, a no-nonsense woman from Hyde Park, kept repeating, "Their feelings are real, but they're not your responsibility to manage." I started sleeping again, sketching again, laughing with Ryan over stupid TikToks. Slowly, the storm passed. A text from Dad broke the silence 10 days later. "We overstepped. Huge. We're backing off. Love you." Mom sent an email, long, rambling, but ending with, "I hate this distance, but I understand it now. Fly safe, baby." Jake called from a new number. "I was an ass. Again. Working on it in meetings. Proud of you, even if it sucks." No more ambushes, no fake emergencies. I boarded the plane to Seattle with 2 suitcases, a carry-on full of art supplies, and a heart that still ached, but lighter. The storm hadn't destroyed me. It had cleared the air. And on the other side, sky wide open.
Spring in Seattle is something else, the kind of green that hits you like a reset button. Evergreens dripping from last night's rain, cherry blossoms exploding along the sidewalks, the Olympic Mountains sharp against a sky that finally stays blue for more than a day. I'd been here 3 months, and some mornings I'd step onto my tiny balcony with coffee and just stare, half convinced I'd dreamed the whole move. The apartment was small, but mine, exposed brick, huge windows overlooking Capitol Hill's bustle, a kitchen big enough for actual cooking. I'd hung my favorite prints, scattered plants that somehow hadn't died yet, and turned the second bedroom into a studio where light poured in all afternoon. Work was everything I'd hoped. Senior designer at a boutique agency specializing in tech startups. Brainstorm sessions that ran long because ideas were flowing. Clients who trusted my vision. A team that celebrated wins with rooftop happy hours. Ryan arrived a month after me. Sublet sold, job fully remote. We found a bigger place together in Fremont, walking distance to the canal, quirky Sunday markets, views of the water. We adopted a scruffy rescue mutt named Luna, who dragged us on trails every weekend. Life felt full. Not perfect, but mine. Back in Illinois, things were shifting too. Slowly, like ice breaking on the lake in March. Cracks first, then bigger chunks giving way. Dad's letter came first, forwarded from my old address. Thick envelope, his careful block printing on the front. He joined a support group for men dealing with infidelity fallout, not just cheaters, but the whole mess of shame and regret. He wrote about finally telling Ethan and Madison, his other kids, the full truth. They'd been angry, years of half-truths catching up, but one had agreed to meet for coffee. Baby steps. He'd also started woodworking again, a hobby he'd dropped decades ago. Built Mom a new kitchen island. "Feels good to make something solid," he wrote, instead of hiding. At the end, "Your mom's doing better than I expected. We both misused something fierce, but we're proud. Come home when it feels right. Doors open." Mom's progress showed up in actions more than words. She texted one April morning a photo of her at the starting line of a 5K for breast cancer research. Sweaty, grinning, holding a sign, "Survivor and still running." Caption, "First race ever. Thought of you the whole way." I called her that night. First real conversation in months. She told me she'd switched therapists, someone tougher who called her on her guilt trips. She was volunteering at the local women's shelter, teaching basic computer skills. She said, "Helps me remember I'm more than just a wife who stayed too long." We talked about the move, my job, the dog, safe stuff. Then she paused. "I was wrong," she said quietly, "about so much. I taught you love meant erasing yourself. I'm unlearning that now." I teared up. "I'm proud of you, Mom." "You too, baby. More than you know." Jake's turning point came in May. He'd finished probation, stayed clean, got a job at a landscaping company, steady outdoor work that kept him moving. He was living in a sober house, seeing Lily every weekend. One Saturday, he FaceTimed me from a park, Lily on the swings behind him. "Uncle Jake's pushing me super high, Aunt Em," she yelled. Jake looked healthy, tan, clear-eyed, a little sheepish. 6 months, he said, holding up a chip from his pocket.
didn't think I'd make it. We talked for an hour. He asked about Seattle, actually listened when I described the agency projects, told me about his sponsor, a gruff Vietnam vet who didn't let him bullshit. I was mad at you for a long time, he admitted, for saying no, but it's the best thing anyone ever did for me, forced me to grow up. He paused. I'm sorry, Em, for all of it. The money, the lies, the Thanksgiving blow-up. You didn't deserve any of that. I forgave him, not in a big dramatic moment, just a quiet, I know you're trying. That's enough for now. We started texting regularly, dumb stuff, memes, dog pictures, him sending photos of Lily's school art, normal sibling stuff we'd never really had. The real test came in June. My agency landed a huge client, a sustainable outdoor brand, and they wanted me to lead the rebrand. Long hours, high stakes. I was thriving, but exhausted. One night, I got a call from Mom. Grandma had fallen, broken her hip. Surgery went fine, but recovery would be rough. We could really use you here, she said, voice careful, no tears. Old me would have booked a flight that second. New me paused. I'm sorry, Mom, I can't come right now. Deadline's in 2 weeks, and I'm point on it. But I'll call Grandma tomorrow, send flowers, fly out after the pitch if she still needs help. Silence. Then, okay, honey, we'll manage. You focus on work. No guilt trip, no, but family first. Just acceptance. I hung up shaking, with relief, with pride. Grandma recovered faster than expected. I visited in July, short trip on my terms. Stayed in a hotel, rented a car, set the schedule. Dinner with the family one night, lunch with Jake and Lily another. Hugs, stories, no ambushes. Mom even drove me to the airport, teary but smiling. Next time we'll come to you, she promised. The tide had turned. Not a fairy tale ending. Therapy bills still came, old triggers still popped. Forgiveness was a daily choice. But the dynamic had flipped. They were building their own lives. I was living mine. And for the first time, love didn't feel like a debt. It felt like air. Clean, wide open Pacific salt air.
It's December now, my second winter in Seattle, and the city is draped in that soft, misty glow that makes everything feel like a postcard. Twinkling lights strung across Fremont's quirky shops, the smell of wood smoke mixing with salt air from the Sound, Luna barking at seagulls on our morning walks along the ship canal. Ryan and I have a real routine. Saturday farmers market for fresh sourdough and oysters, Sunday hikes up to Discovery Park, where the Olympics rise white and sharp against the horizon. I've even learned to love the rain, not just tolerate it, the way it hushes the world and makes coffee taste better. Work is the kind of busy that energizes instead of drains. The rebrand I led last summer won a regional design award. My name's on the plaque in the agency lobby. I mentor junior designers now, run client workshops, pitch new business. Freelance gigs still come in on the side, mostly passion projects for nonprofits and women-owned startups. My portfolio's grown thicker than I ever imagined back when I was sneaking sketches between family emergencies. But the real piece, it's quieter than any of that. It's in the way I sleep through the night now. No more 3 a.m. panic spirals waiting for a crisis text. It's in the boundaries that stuck. Family visits on my terms. Mom and Dad flew out for a long weekend in September, stayed in an Airbnb downtown, let me play tour guide. We hiked Rattlesnake Ledge, ate crab at Pike Place, laughed until we cried over old photos. No guilt trips, no ambushes, just presence. Jake came in October with Lily. His treat, first big trip sober. We rented a house on Whidbey Island for 4 days. Lily chased waves, Jake grilled salmon he'd caught on a charter, and one night around the fire pit, he thanked me again. You saved my life, Em, by not saving it. I told him he saved his own. We both knew the truth was somewhere in the middle. Mom's running 10Ks now, sends me race bib photos like badges of honor. Dad's woodworking has turned into a side hustle, custom cutting boards sold at local markets. He texts pictures of each one before he ships it. Grandma's in assisted living but thriving. She FaceTimes me every Sunday to show off her latest jigsaw puzzle. We're not fixed, we're human,
Triggers still pop up. Mom slips into old patterns sometimes. Jake has hard days. Dad gets quiet when shame creeps in. But they catch themselves now. Apologize. Back off. Therapy's a family habit these days, not a secret. Ryan proposed last month. It wasn't some grand gesture, no flash mob or billboard, just a foggy morning on the Ballard Locks, Luna wearing a bandana that said, "Will you marry Aunt Em?" He got down on one knee with the ring I'd secretly pinned on a private Pinterest board months ago. Simple solitaire, rose gold, perfect. I said yes before he finished the question. We're planning a small wedding next fall. Here, outdoors, maybe on a ferry or a vineyard on Bainbridge. Families invited, they're excited. No drama forecasted. I think about that girl I used to be sometimes. The one scrubbing attics on beautiful Saturdays, transferring money she couldn't spare, apologizing for having plans. I don't hate her. I'm grateful to her. She kept everyone afloat long enough for them to learn how to swim. But I don't miss her. The biggest lesson wasn't that family doesn't matter. It's that love isn't a ledger of sacrifices. Real love leaves room for everyone to breathe, including me. I was raised to believe saying no to family was disrespectful, the ultimate betrayal of blood and loyalty. I carried that belief like a backpack full of bricks, adding one every time I said yes when I wanted to scream no. Until I finally realized never saying no wasn't protecting them, it was destroying me, piece by quiet piece. That first real no, at Thanksgiving, voice shaking, legs barely holding me up, wasn't the end of my family. It was the beginning of my life. It was the moment I stopped being the glue holding a broken house together and started building my own solid ground. If you're reading this and something in your chest tightened, if you've ever felt guilty for wanting space, time, dreams of your own, listen, your peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. Say the no when you need to. Walk away when staying costs too much. Choose yourself, even when the people you love most make it feel like betrayal. Because on the other side of that terrifying word, the one you were taught never to say, is freedom, is joy, is the version of you that gets to wake up in a city that feels like home, coffee steaming on the balcony, dogs snoring at your feet, fiancé planning dinner while you sketch something just for fun, is peace that doesn't come from everyone else being okay. It comes from knowing you are, finally, irrevocably worth it. So if you're holding that no in your throat right now, scared of what happens if you let it out, do it anyway. Your peace is waiting, and you're worth every beautiful, messy, rain-soaked inch of it.